Hello and welcome to this class on jQuery effects. So I have downloaded the file I put on the Blackboard and I'm going to rename it. So I call it jQuery effects.html. I'm going to add that. I'm going to open this up in Text Wrangler, my code editor, and I'm going to view it with Firefox. There we go. All right, go back to the code editor. Okay, so I already have the title in there, so I don't have to change that, but I want to separate my code just like I asked you to do for your assignment, and it looks like some people still have a little bit of confusion about that. So I want to put all the style in a separate file. I'm going to highlight it all, copy it, and I'm going to create a new file and paste it in there and just adjust it so it just goes back to the edge. I'm going to save this and I'm going to call it style.css. Hopefully in the right folder here, making sure, yes I am. Okay, then I go back inside my HTML file. Of course I have to remove all of that, and I cannot use the style tag. So if I put my style inside a separate file, I have to use a different tag. So I'm going to get rid of this, and I'm going to have the link tag. Link, then you have to have the word rel equal style sheet in quotes, and then tell it where this file is. You use href equal, and since it's in the same folder, I'm going to use period / and just the name of the file, style.css, and then close my tag. And I use a / tag because it's a standalone tag, so it doesn't contain anything, so it only has one tag instead of an opening and closing tag, so use a /. Now strictly speaking, I didn't need a period and / because if you omit that, the browser knows to look into the folder where the HTML file is, but it's just a very good habit. Then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to put all our code, all our jQuery code inside the a separate file. So right now I only have the document ready function, so I'm going to copy that one. I'm going to highlight it, I'm going to copy, create a new file, I'm going to paste it in here, and then I'm going to adjust the code so it goes all the way to the edge. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to call it jQuery effects.js, and making sure that I'm in the right folder. Yes I am, week 9, and there we go. Now go back to the HTML file, and of course I don't need all of that, so I can remove it, and I can bring the closing script tag on the same page. I also have this old type text JavaScript. You really don't need that anymore in HTML5. I just need to tell it where this file lives, so I use the word src for source. Really, I don't know why they couldn't make this. It means the same thing, href for link and src for script. It really is the same thing. It would be nicer if they could have agreed on using either one, but that's the way it is. So once again, I have to tell it where this JavaScript file is. It's in the same folder, so I'm going to type period / and the name of the file, which is a jQuery effects, I think it's lowercase, JS, and I'm going to save that. Okay, so what do I have inside this HTML5? I see there's a div with an ID of wrapper. This is just so that things kind of get centered. Then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, a bunch of buttons inside a div, a bunch of other buttons inside a second div. So it looks like there's 4 divs with buttons, and each button has a specific ID. Then I have below another div with a paragraph in it that has an ID of special. And below that I have another div with an ID of div2 with a paragraph. Well, let's look at how it looks on Firefox. Here we go. So I'm going to reload to make sure that everything, all the changes I made are fine. So that's where I'm at. I have my code validator displayed, so I went to Tools, Display Page Validation. And so what this is, this check mark right here, so it checks that my HTML code is validated. And I think that a lot of you still don't understand exactly how that works. That should have been covered in your Web 131 class, so I'm not going to go over that again, but you need to validate your HTML. So you should have a nice check mark right here. If you have an error and there's an X, you can click on that and it will bring you to a page that tells you what kind of errors you made. And I have Firebug open, so it displays the errors. So these two tools should always be open when you work on your assignments so that you can catch any type of mistakes that you make. All right, so what do I want to do? I want to explore the effects in jQuery a little bit. So I created these sets of buttons, and I'm going to assign a different effects to each button. I'm going to start with a hide button. So when I click on this button, now nothing happens. What I like to happen is that when I click on this button, I like this paragraph. Remember, this paragraph had an ID of special. I like it to disappear. Okay, so let's translate that into jQuery. And we're going to go inside the file. Okay, so I have my document ready function. So I said when I click on the button that says hide, and I give it an ID of hide, I want this div with an ID of special to disappear. Let's translate the first part. So when I click on a button with an ID of hide, so the selector is $, in quotes, hide, because that's the ID I've used. And I said when I click on it, so I had to add the click event, parentheses, semicolon. Then inside the parentheses, I'm going to pass a function, open and close parentheses, open and close curly braces. Then I separate the curly braces, and I come inside here. Okay, so that's the first part. So that's the action the user, in this case myself, is doing. When I click on a button with an ID or with an element with an ID of hide, what do I want to happen? I want the element with an ID of special to disappear. So come back to the code here. So I select the element with an ID of special, and I want it to disappear. So if you look at the hand that I gave you, this is really an easy thing to do. We can use the effect hide, open and close parentheses, semicolon, save, and come back to the browser, reload. So if I didn't make any mistake, when I click on this, okay, that was instantaneous. So these two paragraphs look the same. I was confused for a second. So the paragraph above disappears. So basically what happened, it get assigned at the property display, and that is set to none. So the paragraph below shoots up immediately and it takes its space. It's almost like that previous div, the first div, doesn't even exist. Now we can actually slow down this effect. So this is great, but we can make it even better. So now if I want to make it move a little bit more slowly, I can actually enter something. So I can enter the speed in milliseconds, or I can enter the word either slow or fast or normal. So I want to make it move more slowly. So I'm going to enter slow in quotes. Save that. I'm going to try that again. So when I reload, the second paragraph appears. Now when I click on hide, it should move, there we go, a little bit more slowly. So the effect is a little more visible. I can also change that. Instead of using slow, don't know how many milliseconds that corresponds to, but I can play around. I can enter actually a number. 1000 indicates 1 second. That's a number of milliseconds you enter there. So if I want to make it disappear in 5 seconds, so a really long time, I enter 5000. I'm going to save that and reload. So the second div appears, and now I click on hide, and now slowly goes away. Maybe a tad too slow, so I'm going to make it move a little bit faster. It's going to change that to 3000. Okay. Right. So now that's the first button. Okay, so that's all it does, fine. But now I want to make it appear again. So I have to add an event to this button that says show. And it happens to have an ID of show. So I add the event click. So when I click on that button, I want that same item that I hid to appear. So I'll go back to my code. I'm gonna keep on working on this. So when I click on the button when ID of show, click and enter passive function in it, always the same thing, then separate curly braces. All right, I can actually just copy and paste this line. I'm gonna copy, because what I want is not for that element to hide, but to be displayed. And I'm going to make it show slowly, or maybe it'll be faster. Let's make it 1 second. So they take the same type of parameters. This is the speed. As I said, you can give it a string that says either slow or normal or fast, or you can enter the number of milliseconds, and you can determine however many milliseconds you want your animation to take. I'm going to save this and reload. So now I first hide that div, kind of slowly. Now show it a little bit faster. Hide and show. Okay, there's also something called toggle. It's another effect, and so basically that what that does, every time you click, either shows or hide that element. Depending on if it is hidden, it will show it. If it's visible, it will hide it. So that's very convenient. So we're gonna come back to the code just to make sure that you understand still. So these are all the buttons, and I given each button an ID so I can get hold of them that way. So I gave them ID that makes sense, and I just basically use the same text. So it's very easy to identify what's going on. So now I keep on going here. I add another couple lines. So I'm going to select the element, the button with an ID of toggle. And when I'm going to click on it, what do I want to happen? Let me separate that. Actually, I'm going to create my function first. Separate the curly braces. So I'm going to copy and paste, because it's always the same element I'm acting upon. So it's always that element with an ID or special. So I don't want it to hide. I don't want to show. I want to the browser to decide intelligently what should happen depending on its visibility. So instead of using either show or hide, I'm going to use toggle, and so that will work in such a way that I don't have to worry if it is open or closed. The opposite will happen. So come back to the browser, reload. So now I'm going to, if I click show, for example, nothing happens, because this element, that's the one that's been targeted, it's already visible, so nothing really happens. If I hide it, of course it hides it, but if I click on hide again, nothing happens. So, but if I click on toggle, it either shows it or hides it, depending on what its state is. Very convenient to have, much handier actually. Using the same logic, we have fade in and fade out. Actually, let's see slide down and slide up and slide toggle first, and then we'll get to fade in, fade out, and fade to. So slide down. So slide down only happens when an element is hidden, because it makes it visible. Slide up, it kind of rolls it up, and slide toggle kind of acts the same way as toggle, but the effect is slightly different. So if I'm going to show you again, you see how this hides and shows by shrinking the div to the left. Slide down, slide up will have a very similar behavior, but the element will kind of start displaying from the top down, or being hidden from the bottom up. All right, so let's go back to the code. And I'm going to get hold of the same Actually, I'm going to get hold of the element with an ID of, let me check again what that is. Slide down, slide up, slide toggle. So the first one is going to be slide up because I'm assuming that it's hidden. So I click on it, and when I click on it, I'm going to pass this function, and inside the function I can copy this, paste. So what I want to happen is that the element slides up, meaning that, and you wouldn't know that until you try that, that it's going to hide it, but instead of shrinking the div from right to left, it will shrink the div from the bottom up. Let's see if that's true. So now both divs are visible, and I'm going to click on slide up, and nothing happens. So I must have made a mistake of some kind. Okay, did I hide? I might have. No, it is as I thought. It's not giving me any error. It's valid HTML. I don't have any errors. Okay, so that's a little bit more interesting. Let's see what I did. That doesn't make any sense. Slide up. When I click on, let's see, maybe maybe it's not happy about, yes, I think that's what it is. I capitalized the U in slide up. But JavaScript is case sensitive, so I have to make that lowercase. So I'm going to save that, and let's see if it's true. I'm going to reload that. I'm going to click on slide up, and yes, that was the problem. So you have to be careful that you enter the ID exactly as you spelled it out, and don't start capitalizing something that was not, or make something lowercase that was capitalized. All right, so I can then click on show, and I will display it, and I can slide it up. So slide up only works, so if I click on this again, it's the same thing as clicking on hide. It's already hidden, so nothing's going to happen. Now we're going to make it slide down, so go back to the code. I can actually just copy the whole thing here, and just adjust the indentation a little bit. So this time I'm going to make something happen when I click on an element with an ID of slide down. And I'm going to target still the same element with an ID of special, but this time I'm going to make it slide down. I'm going to save that, go back to the code. Both divs have been shown. Now I slide it up, and I slide it down. Now I hide it, it moves to the left. Now I show it. Now I hide it again with toggle. Now it shows again, and so on. So the last one, slide toggle, here you should already have a sense how that's going to work. So I'm going to copy all 3 lines here, and I'm going to target the element with an ID of slide toggle. When I click on it, I will slide toggle the element with an ID of special. All very similar. So slide toggle, this was toggle. So the syntax is all the same. The logic is all the same. So it shouldn't be particularly complicated to get this. So I'm going to reload this. So I'm going to slide up because the element is visible. I slide it down, and if I click slide toggle, I can keep on repeating this behavior. It basically just once again, just to reiterate this, it just changes the direction how it's going to hide this. If I click on toggle, it's going to hide it moving to the left. If I click on slide toggle, it's going to show it from the top down. Now fade in, fade out work very similarly. So let's eventually, when you fade something out, it'll be completely invisible, and when you fade something in, it's going to be completely visible. And when you use fade to, you can determine how visible you're going to make it. So let's go back to the code. I still have that in memory. There we go. So I'm gonna use fade in. So let me show you the HTML. So now we are right here. We got these three buttons with the idea of fade in, fade out, and fade to. Right, my first button is fade in. When I click on it, special is gonna fade in. Notice how they all take the speed, and you can change that any way you want to. And since I'm at it, I might as well just do the other one. I'm gonna copy that and enter below. This time I'm gonna click on the element that has an idea of fade out, and my element with idea of special is going to fade out at a speed of 1 second. So let's see. I'll reload this. Now if I click on fade in, nothing's gonna happen. Why? Because this element, it's already visible. So if I want to make something happen here, I have to click on fade out, and now it's not visible at all. And I'm gonna fade it back in. And it's 1 second, so it moves very slowly, but you can make it, let's change it to 2 seconds so you can see that a little bit more obvious. Let's even make it 3 seconds. Now, just for a second, I want to point out here, people have been confused about indentation. Look at the code that we have. Notice how I align everything. When something starts, this block of code is indented, and very clearly I can see where my click event stops right here. So you want indentation to have to follow logic. I know that this block of code is executed inside this function, so I align these curly braces and with the starting dollar to make it very obvious, and everything is inside the document ready function. It should become second nature to indent and keep your code clean. It will save you hours and hours of work. I speak of experience. The cleaner your code is, the better program you're going to become, and it really helps you to understand your logic. So I will emphasize until the end of this semester that indentation, it is crucial in your success as a programmer. And some people that still have questions about that, feel free to get in touch with me during the week. It's very hard for me to know what you know and what you don't know. I don't know most of you. So if you have any type of doubt, get in touch with me. And if it's a quick question, I'll try to answer as fast as I can before your assignment is due. Okay, so we have changed the speed. So let's save that and go back to this. Okay, I'm going to make this element fade out. And it does a little bit more slowly so you can see the effect better. And when it's done, that effect is done, the second div slides up or moves up in this position. When I fade it in, immediately the div is going to be pushed down, the second div, and this element fades into. So fade to takes two parameters. The first one is the speed, and the next one, separated by a comma, is a decimal number. 0 meaning the element is going to become completely invisible. 1 won't do anything because it means the element is completely visible. So you would never want to use fade to 1 unless you're fading back into view. So any other number will fade it to a certain degree of transparency. So I'm going to use 0.2 here just to make it very obvious. I'm going to save that. I'm going to reload that. And when I click on fade to, you notice, oh, I have an error. What did I do? Fade, oh yes, fade out. I use fade out. I had to change that to fade to. Fade to, okay, save that. Try that again. Okay, so when I click on fade to now, you see that the element never completely disappears, becomes very transparent. It stays visible because this other div didn't slide up, but it became this could be useful if you want to draw attention to something else. So let's say you want somebody to really, it's actually used with certain special effects, like when you have a light box example. You want to draw attention, for example, to this other div, then you could make everything else slightly transparent and only have one element be fully visible. The last effect that is part of the jQuery core library is Animate. And Animate gives you a chance to create your own special effects because it lets you animate all different digital CSS properties. What does it mean? I could animate the width. I could animate the size, the width of the border. I could animate a font size. So anything that's digital can be animated, but you cannot animate colors. For that, you're going to need to do something special, and we'll do in a second. So what we're going to do now, let me reload this. So we have our two divs. What I'm going to do, I'm going to change the width of this div. I'm going to change its opacity, and I'm going to maybe give it push it to the left. And let's put that all together in the code. All right, let's look at HTML. So I have a button with an ID of animate. That's what I'm going to use. I'm going to come down here, tab. I'm going to select the element with an ID of animate. And when I click on it, I want this function to be executed. So I'm going to separate the curly braces. It's a usual deal. I want to target the element with an ID of special, so I get it from above. So I'm going to use animate, that effect. Inside the parentheses, I can give it two different parameters, a set of properties and values, and the speed at which I want these properties to happen. Let's start, then it can go inside curly braces. So let's start with the width. So I want the width to be 50%, to become 50% of what it is right now. But I cannot just enter like that. I have to put quotes around this. Around the property and around the value. Okay, so that's my first parameter inside curly braces. And then the next parameter is the speed. So I'm going to give it 2.5 seconds for that to happen. And I can separate this. So just to make it a little bit more visible, I can have these on their own line so that it's easier to read my code. I can see right away, oh, that's what happens when with animate. This property and values we applied, it will take 2.5 seconds. Sometimes when you have everything on one line, it's really hard to read. So whenever it makes sense, separate your code on different lines. But of course, it is indented because it is contained within this, it's part of this block of code. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to reload this. So when I click on animate, notice how it becomes 50% of this size, and that's where it stops. All the content is still there, it's just been changed. Now we can add a few things. Let's change its opacity, and maybe let's change the so I can keep on going here. So these different sets of properties and values are separated by a comma. So I'm going to say opacity. I'm going to make it, and I have to remember, I guess it's strictly speaking, you don't need to enter quotes for the property, but you definitely need to enter quotes for the value, even when it's a number. And I'm going to have the curly braces on its own line. The opacity, and I want to change the border width, maybe. How about that? So quotes, border width. Oh, what I'm gonna make it? I'm going to make it. Actually, I don't even know if I have a border width. Yes, I do. I'm going to make it, let's say, 10 pixels, just to make it super obvious. There we go. I have all my quotes matched up, and I have my curly braces matched up. If I was really, really fussy, I could just probably do something like this, just to make it more obvious. I mean, you can go kind of crazy with indentation. At some point, it has to make sense. So if this makes sense for you, fine. But this is not one of those indentation issues I would ever argue about with you, because sometimes it has, as I said, you can become excessive with indentation. But you might see this. That's why I pointed out. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to reload the code. So now when I click on animate, if I didn't make it as much thicker, and the opacity is 50% of what it was before. So it's 50% transparent. Now, if I wanted to change the color of the text or the background or the border, I could not do that because, as I said, animate only takes numbers. So I could not do something like common color and just enter red, for example. That would not work. You can try that, save that, reload that. Probably going to give me some kind of error. No, it didn't give me an error, but it still didn't do it. So to be able to change something like the color, I have to use a special library. So what we've been using so far is the jQuery core library, but there is also another library. There's many other ones, but the other one that's very important is the jQuery UI library, meaning user interface. So let me open another tab here. And I'm going to go to jQuery.com. Why didn't I go there? jQuery.com. That's the main jQuery page. Now look at the tabs up here. This is what is called the jQuery code core library. If you hover over the second icon here, it shows jQuery UI. I'm going to click on that. And this has all kind of other fun things you can do with jQuery. A whole bunch of effects and other things, by the way. So if I scroll down here, it comes to the effects. I can animation right now. So it gives you example. Let me scroll that up a little bit. So if I click on this, see how the color goes from being completely white to pink to red? Let me go back. It's called the background is completely white. It doesn't immediately go to red. It changes from white to pink to red. How do they do that? You can always look at view source to take a peek at how that is done. But basically you have to load another library. So if you look, this is the head. So this is the main jQuery library, but there's also something else called jQuery UI library. And that's what we need to load. So the easiest way to do that, I'm going to open another tab. I'm going to go to code jQuery.com. And that brings me to this page that has all the libraries. I think we looked at it last time. If I scroll down a little bit, I can see that I have my jQuery UI library. If I only want to change the color, I could use just the jQuery library. You can get right here. But we're going to look at other effects. So we're going to use the main jQuery UI library. Repeat, this is only for colors. This includes more things. We want the minified version, so I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to highlight this. I'm going to copy. I'm going to go back to my code. I'm going to go inside my HTML. I want to link to that library. So I'm going to come here below my, my main jQuery library. I'm going to enter a line. I'm going to use a script. Source equal, in quotes, the URL that we copied. And then we're going to close the script. So what this does, it also links, so it loads more jQuery code, and then you can use it. Let's save that. Now I can go inside my jQuery code, and what I want to do, not only animate the properties that have a numeric value, but also the color. So now this should work. I'm going to save that and going to come back to our file, which is right here. I'm going to reload this. So the text should go from white to red because I used color red. Now because we changed the not visibility, the transparency, I guess, the opacity, there we go. When I change the opacity, it's not going to be full pink. Well, let's see if that what I said is true. I'm going to click on this. There we go. Really ugly to read red on blue, but you get the concept. So if I actually remove the opacity, so let me comment that out. I can just comment one line by having the double forward slashes. I'm going to save this. Let me try that again. And yes, well, I guess we'll stick with red. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to click on animate. And here it is, full red. So as I said, the animation, animating colors would not work unless you load that other library, the UI library, and that allows you to then enter other properties that don't have a numeric value, something like color or background color or border color and so forth. Okay, so now what I want to see, how we can use a library to create special effects. So this is the button that we're going to use for. But before we do that, I want to come back to that jQuery UI library. There we go. And I want to, so that's, I went, just to show you again, I'm on the second icon. I click on here on jQuery UI, and you come, if I click on it, I just come to the main jQuery UI page. Then I slide down a little bit, scroll down, and we've seen color animation. Now I'm going to look at effect. Effect is a lot of fun, and there's several different effects, and it brings me to this page. I have a drop down menu here, and I can click on it to see blind, bounce, and so forth. Let's see what bounce does. So I'm going to run the effect. Notice how this thing kind of bounce up and down a little bit. Let's try another one. Let's try explode. I'm going to run that effect. A lot of fun to do that. The one I wanted to look at is highlight. Very handy sometimes. In this particular case, it highlights the entire div or the entire paragraph, but I want to use it to highlight just some words. So let's go back to the code and take a peek at the HTML code, and notice that inside the two paragraph, I have a couple words that they are surrounded by span tags. So I want to target those elements, those words inside the span tag, and highlight them. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on a button, hit an effect, and when I do click on it, I want the element span to be highlighted. So let's go inside jQuery, enter a couple lines. So I'm going to select the element with an ID of effect, and when I click on it, I want this function to be executed. I want not a particular when an element with an ID, I want both element, they have a span tag, to be highlighted. So I got to choose the element, span, and how do we use highlight? You cannot enter highlight here. That's not the way it works. Let's look back at the code and see how that is done. So I have highlight, I'm going to look at the source, and I'm going to scroll down until I find this. Okay. Maybe this was not such a good idea. Maybe this was not such a good idea. I can just pick it out with my eyes right now, but let me show you how it is done. So you cannot use highlight like that. You're going to have to use the effect called effect, and you're gonna open and close parentheses. Inside the parentheses, you got to pick what effect you want to run. We want to run highlight. So inside quotes, we're gonna, oops, inside the parentheses. Inside quotes, we're gonna enter highlight. And after that, we're gonna enter a set of open and close curly braces, because that's another parameter we're not gonna use right now. And the last parameter is the speed. I'm gonna give it 3000. Okay, I'm gonna save that. Probably not a whole lot is gonna happen. I'll show you why. I'm gonna save that and go back to my page. Reload that to make sure that I got everything working right. So what I should see when I click on this button with an idea of effect, I should see the words there inside span getting a background, some color. So I found the problem. I misspelled, well, I forgot to add a T at the end of highlight. So I had spelled highlight instead of highlight. So that's why it wasn't working when I added T. I'm gonna save that and go back to my file and reload. When I click on effect, there we go. The two words are highlighted, and then the effect disappears. I want to show you one more effect. We're going to make something puff away. So we're going to target the button. There's an ID of fun. And then we'll make our div with ID of special puff away. I'm going to go back to the code. And I'm going to target the button with ID of fun. And I have to use effect again. And inside effect, the first parameter is puff. Basically what I'm doing, I'm using the parameters. Let's see if they're right here. Right. I'm picking the different parameters here. Puff, pulsate, scale. So you can substitute any of those, and if you are confused on how they are used, you might search for them in here, or you can look at the code. Sometimes this code, because it has the drop-down list, it's a little bit more complex, so it's not so easy to see how you need to use it, but they also have more documentation on each one of these effects. So if you go to API documentation and choose some of these effects, you'll be able to view more demos and understand how that is done. So I'm going to go back to the code. So puff, comma, then I'm going to have open and close curly braces, nothing yet because it doesn't take another parameter there. And I'm going to make it puff away in 2 seconds. Save that and go back. Reload. And let's see what kind of effect I get. Oh, I use, it made my button go away. All right, that's not exactly what I wanted. I wanted, yes, I did not add that. Oh, okay, so what happened when I clicked on it, it just did it by itself. So no, I want to click on the button with an ID of effect. And I want that to happen. Okay, ooh, what a mess. Click, function, and close my parentheses. Then I separate my curly braces. Now I'm going to copy this and put it inside. And I want this effect to be done on my div with ID of special. There we go. That makes a little bit more sense. Okay. So, and I had to get rid of this line right here. So when I click on the element with ID of fun, the element with ID of special, better spell this right, special, there we go, will disappear in a puff. Save that and see if I was able to finally do it right. Okay, that's my button with fun. Alright, so not so super fantastic, but maybe the exploding effect might be more fun. You can experiment with that. The last thing I wanted to show you is how to use stop. There's another button here that's called stop. So sometimes, especially, let's show everything. when we have a slide toggle. Let's say you want to stop an animation in its track. So I'm going to add some more seconds to slide toggle, make it last longer, so whenever we want to, we can stop the animation. So let me find slide toggle. There we go. It happens in 1 second. I'm going to give it 5 seconds. So now when I do that, when I click on this, it's going to take really long time to go up, and I have time to click on stop and make it stop. So I'm going to target this button right here when I do stop. I'm going to come inside jQuery. I'm going to target my button when I do stop, and when I click on it, I want this function to be executed. I want to, so what do I select here? I select the element on which the effect is being done. So is our friend the element when I do special. So I'm going to select it. And I'm just going to say stop. Whatever animation is going to be, is happening to it, is going to be stopped. Save that and reload. So if I slide toggle, it's going, I stop it. And fade to, actually I wanted to go to toggle. There we go. And toggle, stop. So you see, if you can stop any type of animation anytime. Let me show this. Oh no, the reason why this is not happening, so see what's going on here? Because I didn't make it disappear, I only faded out partially. Hitting show is not going to do anything. So I can do, make it disappear completely. And now I can hit toggle and maybe stop if I want to. Toggle will work, even if I stop in its tracks. It just will not completely be visible. Oh, it's still there, the opacity is still set to 0.5, that's why. So if I want to go back to beginning, I have to reload this. And there we go. So I can once again slide toggle and stop. I just hit fade to, and I guess that's what created all the problems. The last thing I want to show you is how your assignment might look like. So I asked you to write a few paragraphs, so like a FAQ type of page that you have a bunch of questions and an explanation. When you first loaded, the answers to the questions will be hidden, and you're going to have two links. One that is going to say show all, so when you click on it, all the answers will become visible, and when you click on hide all the answers will become invisible. And you can also do that individually on each answer. So when I click on this arrow, the answer is going to become visible, and when I click again, it's invisible. And then I can do to the other one and open them all up this way, and then when I click on hide all, they will all become invisible. And I think that's it for today. Until next time.